Is it recording my screen now?
Yes.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining the collaboratory workshop for first week. Today we are going to have introduction class for Python. So I just checked the job form. It's like, does anyone has experiences for coding? Okay. So this class is introductory class. So if you kind of know like data structures and like data type, maybe this too.
It might be easier for us.
Okay. So if you have experiences for data types, so this class may be way easier for use. So it's basically for beginners like have no experiences for coding, and I hope you will learn something from these workshops. I emailed you the requirement for the class last night. So you've installed Anaconda navigators on your laptop. If not, those workstations have already installed. Okay. Oh, it's on the wall. So there's workstation, NGS_analysis. Yeah. So for those that has already installed, you probably just launch Anaconda navigators first. So you can call from this place and you can just call Anaconda navigators or just to open this one. So this screen will pop out. We are using the Jupyter notebook, this one, and please launch this one. So they will open a tab in your browser, okay? So I hope everyone has already followed. Okay, sounds good. Let me know if you have any problems. So launch this and in your browsers, you might go to the home path on your laptop. Okay, so go to the place you store for the IPython notebook I sent over yesterday. And you will just, for example, I store in the directory called Intro to Python in my desktop. I just go here and then click this one. And then this notebook will pop out in your browser.
I think there are students. I guess it's so sort that happens to so they've got Are you? I didn't think about this. Yeah.
But if you go to, oh, is this not? No, so this is the one that's like built on. Oh, okay. And you guys. And then you can open Jupyter Notebook. You usually sign up each side. It's like it's a browser. It's like into a browser, but it's computers. Okay, I think you're good in that case.
Yeah.
Okay. I will.
So let's wait a bit longer. So I think I want everyone to follow in this step so they can see what materials is and we can proceed. So, which is good. So today the class will be like, we're starting from some concept and the setup. We'll work from the Jupyter Notebook you just have launched. So you will go step by step, like you can start in your first script in Jupyter Notebook. And we'll learn basic data types and variables, the concept in today's class as well. And if we got enough time, we're starting to learn something called if statement. So it's the basic structures for code programming. For students, if you are taking the workshop for credits, we'll have assignments. So I put at the bottom or the very end of the materials in this notebook. So there's maybe 3 assignments. For students taking the credits, you have to take that, and I'll have 1 week for you to finish it. So you just email me your assignments by the end of next week, and then I'll have the score for you. Okay. So I hope everyone has already in this page. We're on the same page right now. If not, please raise your hands. We have to make sure. Okay.
You go back to like get it early and then go back then. Yeah. Fast.
Okay, so everyone is we're on the same page right now. So Here is just a note like how we starting from Jupyter Notebook. In other options, like we have this cloud service, like collaboratory, and you can use, but I prefer like everyone is using Jupyter Notebook on your desktop, so you should have more controls on it. Okay, so let's start from the basic data types like in every programming languages. In Python, today we're going to learn starting from string, like the text you see is the list of the strings. And we'll learn something numerical like integer and float later in today's course. We'll have the collection data like list, tuple, this stuff in tomorrow. Yeah, and then if we have time, we might go to Boolean in the very end of today's class as well. Okay. So for this IPython notebook is so we'll see like different cells. For example, like this one, like the thing I typed, these are the comment cells. So you will see how I display. So this is not executable. For this interactive cells, basically they will call Python and run the what you tell Python to do. So let's start from the very first strings to learn programming is hello world. So in Python, the string is stored. Representations will be the double quotation mark or single quotation mark. They both will give you a string. For example, in this one, if you have hello world quoted by this double quote, and then this one will be a string object. And this print in this parenthesis, these are the print functions, which means we'll print this string called hello world. So we can type this one and then press this run button. That will show this output just down below the execution cells. Okay. So this is how the IPython notebook works. So yeah. And then just brief going through how we deal with strings. So they are literal surrounded by either a pair of single quotation or double quotations. We just see they are the same, but you have to be using the same on both the left and right side of this string. Okay. So if you type hello, it's basically the same as single quotations. Single quotation they're the same thing. But if you're not using the same quotation mark, there were raises and arrows called syntax arrow, and they will telling you these unterminated strings, which means they recognize something that should be ended with the same quotation mark, but it's not. So they will raises these syntax errors. Okay. There are some, so basically strings, you have something to notice, like every like uppercase, lowercase, any symbols that does matter in programming languages. There are some special characters you need to memorize, and you will get familiar with this once you start into coding more and more. So the first one is the \n. This means to the new line in Python and most of the programming languages. And the \tab, which will T, that will give you a tab, empty spaces in your terminal. The tab usually the default will be a little bit different on your IDE or your tool. Usually it's like 4 empty spaces, but it depends on how you design. Okay. So when you use this special characters, you need to pay extra cares, like how you have the quotation mark for, like I just said, the double quotation or single quotation, that doesn't matters in programming languages. Okay, so just to summarize what we have just going through with the IPython notebooks. So we just see those code cells and markdown cells. So these types things are the markdown cells. Like I demonstrated this text to you and you can see it, but it's not executable. But for those, the cells you just type your print hello world, the first programs you wrote, those are the code cells that are executable, and they will show the output of your script down below the code cell. Okay. And when you do programming, sometimes when you're just getting started, you have a really long code and you have to get some comment, tell yourself or your collaborators that you are working together to working on the same programming project. You have to get those comments telling people what this line of code is doing. So usually we will do this with the hashtag. So at the end of the code, so they will not interpret it by the Python, but just telling you that you can read like this line, we're doing the print hello stuff. Okay. So you just run how this cells, they will print only the interpreted part of this code. And you can also do this in different ways, is the triple quotation mark, either double quotation or the single one, but you need to have that in pairs. So for example, like for this one, I have a coding block and I want to demonstrate what this coding block is doing. I am starting from this triple quotation mark and telling myself, this is my first programs, and then end up with the triple quotation mark. So they will start, and then you start to interpret it down below the code. They will give you the same output for this one. Okay. So like they will print this, and those in this comment block, they won't be interpreted. Okay. So this is the first data type we learn in Python, which is string. And you might know for characters, like every letters inside these things, they can be one letters of string as well. So in Python, they are the same thing. Okay. So let's do some getting familiar with the IPython notebook. So, and also the string data types. So this is interesting. So we have this X and Y's, and you can starting to type down below this place in this interactive cells, everything you type and then print, they will show up the result. Okay, so we have 3 minutes to doing so. Okay. For examples. Let me know if you have problems. For example.
did they sign the sheet?
Yes. So this it is so this part is just so how can it so basically this one and then plus how to find so it's so you started using with that okay so it's different so you are absolutely right yeah show us something because it could be an experience some inside okay so you can't inside the markdown file no you sort of have to use it so if you want that so just do it action. Okay, so let's go back to this exercise. We'll go through this really quick, see how it go, what it happens. So the first one here is trying to let you memorize, like for strings, they could be double quotation mark or single quotation mark. If we replace these access docs, they will actually give you the same thing, okay? So we'll go like this one, print docs, print this one, they will be the same. And the \T, they will represent a tab. So they will print a string, tab, and another strings, okay? And then let's try and. So and means next line, they will print the two strings into different lines, okay? And then let's try this one that will give you arrow. Okay, so basically you can tell from the color, IPython, the Jupyter notebook is color coded. So you basically will sense some things when you see that your strings is not in the same colors, right? So they will tell you like you will get arrows here. The arrow message is really important. Like you can debugging, like tell what you are doing wrong here. So they're telling you this is a syntax arrows on terminated string literals. So you go back to this place. So remember, like for the strings, you need to be quotations in pair. Okay. So this one we got dogs. Okay, that's good. But for the cast one, is not. So they will raise the arrows at the right place. They will telling you they are expecting a termination for the string literals. Okay, so that is how the syntax arrow goes. So how to fix these arrows? They're telling you can have this backslash, and they will treat these quotation mark as a strings. So they will print it like exactly dog and quotation mark and then cats. Okay. And this one, I'll just skip this because it's basically the same thing like what we just showed with the double quotation mark. So you will get unterminated literal syntax for this one. Okay, and you can fix this. Okay. So any questions for string right now? Got follows. Okay.
I just have a little hard to tell.
Okay. So we just learned the first data types, is the strings. So the message here is just you need to use the quotation mark and then make sure it is to have you are using either single or double quotation in a pair, and inside those the mark there will be the string object for you. Okay. So next we are going to learn about numbers. So the basic number data types we will we'll learn just for the integer and float in this workshops because it's the basic one. And there's another type called complex, but this, if you're going for scientific programmings, you might need to go deep into this. But for the class today, we're just going through the most approachable for integer and float. So integers are the whole numbers, like just for like 1,000, 100s, like this. So float will be the numbers with floating point, like 1.1s, or in scientific representations like this one, for exponential. So these y and z's are both float numbers, okay? And complex numbers, we're just going through, is like imaginary unit for this stuff. So we are dealing with the integer and float here's only. And for numbers, you can do some calculations. That's called arithmetic operations. Like you just know in math, you will use the addition or the minus, just like in math it is. Okay, and you can use multiplications with the asterisk mark and exponentiations with the double asterisk. Okay, and for division is the slash numerical divisions. And always remembers, like if you are calling this numeric divisions, the result will be in the float data types. Okay. And then integer divisions, the result will in the whole numbers with double slash. And modulo operations, they will give you the remainder of this division operations. And it's also an integer output. And everything, like you just write those equations in math, anything inside the parentheses will be treated as hierarchies. Okay. So let's go through this simple arithmetic operations and learn how to do it. So we have 5 to adding up to 7. So these are addition for 2 integer data types. So they will, the output, the interactive will give you 12. Okay. So down below here, we have parentheses. So there will be the priorities for this one. So we will we'll add 5 to 7 first, and then do multiplications with 12. So there will be 12 multiplication for 12. It's 144. Okay. So anything inside the parentheses will be the priorities. Otherwise, they will go to multiplication and division first, and then the addition and minus later. And then remember the double asterisk mark will be the exponentiations mark. So this one will give you 9 for this arithmetic operations. Okay. So it's very understandable. It's just like what you do in your math class. Very simple. It's just changing of some symbols for addition, for multiplications and division, but basically it's the same thing like we learn from math. Okay. And we just know like there's like integer divisions. So when we get a division operations, you will get a quotient and the remainders. So for when you call this double slash, that will give you the quotient called for the floor divisions. And then when you call this percentage mark, they will give you the remainder of this division operations. Okay. And when you do divisions, even though your both two variables are integers, the result will be a float. For example, showing up here, we have 5 divided by 3. They are both integers, but after these divisions, the data type will change into float. So that is something you need to know. Okay. So any questions so far? Should be really straightforward. Okay, so for now, we've learned some data types like string and some numbers. We learned integers and float, basically, for the numerical data types, and we know how to do calculations or arithmetic operations for these numbers. Okay, so next we're going to know some concept for coding. So it's called variables and literals. So variables will reserve a space in the memories to store the data. So the variables can be different data types. Like they can be string, could be numbers, and could be the collection of data types like the list or other things we'll learn in tomorrow's workshops. And so it will be easier for you to call these variables in the same programs multiple times once you assigned these variables, okay? So usually the variables will have their own name. This is specific names inside this script you wrote, and you can call this anytime because it's already stored. And literals represent the exact values corresponding to the variables you assigned. And how do you assign these variables? We just use a very simple symbol, is the equal mark, okay? Like for this formulas, so we'll have variables on the left-hand side. We assign this to be a string called my first variable, exponential mark. So you can tell what is the data types for these variables. So it's a double quotation mark. So this is a string. So we store this stuff, my first variables, assign this to be my first variables. Okay. So every time I call my variables, they will represent these strings. Okay. So inside the, if I assign these variables in this IPython notebook, so there will be, every time you call my underscore variables, there will be these strings showing up. Okay. So these variables could be, like we're just going through, they could be different data types. They could be integers, they could be flows, there could be collections of data. So we can have this in these interactive shells. So I assign my variables to be integer 7 and then print these variables, okay? And then I do arithmetic or the calculations by adding to my variables and what this will show. And you can see this will be the output from when I call the print functions. So every time I call my variables, they will represent sevens. And when I added 7 plus sevens, they will return 14 as the output, okay? Okay, so that's a concept for variables and literals. The important thing is the variable should be a unique name. So there will be, if you reassign things to the same variables, they will override the one you assigned before. Okay. So next is we can check for specific variables to see what is the data type it represents by calling the type functions. So in the type, this one, the type parenthesis, that will mean the functions that will give you what the data type it is inside these parameters, okay? For these examples, if I call type to tell myself what is the data type embedded inside this my variable stuff, or I could type 300 for these integers. So they will give you an integers, and the type give you a float numbers. They will telling you this data type will be float. Okay. So you can just practice this in these interactive shells. If I type if I call type for this 300 dot zeros, they will tell you this is a float variables. Okay. If I call hello world and then I want to know what the data type it is, they will tell you it is a strings. Okay. So you can type anything here and see what it will give you. If you have this without a digit, they will tell you this is an integer. It's numerical variables. Remember, we just assign my variables here. So if I type my variable here, they will tell you this is an integer as well. Okay. So now we do some use of the variables and literals. So we'll assign my variable 1 to be a integer 100, my variable 2 as an integer to be 10, and then print the sum, the addition of these two variables, and then see what the data type it is for this addition. Okay. So we'll know by adding up these two numbers, they will give you a 110, and these will be they will still be an integer data types. Okay. So now we assign the variable 3 to be a float to be 10.0s, and then print out what the result is and see what the data type it is. So you see, we are adding 100 integer to 10.0 float, and the result will be 110.0s, and the result will always be a float. Okay. So why the data type is important is so the precision is important also. And one thing is they will occupy a different amount of memories in your computers. So that's why the data types is really important, even though you might think 100 and 100.0 is the same, but to the computer, they are different stuff. So let's get familiar with some of the things we just learned. See, run the following codes. We assign the x variables to integer 5, and then adding 5 to these integers. What will show up for this when I call print x functions?
Faymon, you close the window for for the instruction. You're muted.
Now?
Yeah, you accidentally left the meeting.
Okay.
So if I wasn't on, your this the video wouldn't have had save at all. Can you stay on the whole entirety? When you go on break, just press
I,
pause, not
I
stop.
think this kicked me out like 5 minutes ago, I guess.
Can you make sure you connect to the collaboratory Wi-Fi because I don't trust EduRoam on you. EduRoam is pretty choppy in the collaboratory, so please just switch over to collaboratory AP.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Luckily for me, I was still on, but I'm in a meeting right now. But just stay if you're gonna go on break, just press pause for the recording, or don't stop it because if you want this to be one single file when I upload it on YouTube.
Yeah, okay.
All right. All right, I'll be back. I
Yeah.
gotta go. I'm in an academic meeting, so all right.
I mean, it's not bad. Oh, really? You didn't want to do like that? Damn. Yeah, what you look. Yeah.
No, it's like, God, it's gonna change everything.
Like half of
Saw my friend show like you know I have my share of confidence. Let them know.
I feel like that was very strong insights, but like jewel,
You know,
I need to see that. I don't know. I feel like.
Here you go, thinking again. Yes, my person's 80. So yeah. Just time to learn it. I'm like, yeah, just generally. It's like that's like my secret. It's like yeah, it's just not. It's like this is more.
Oh, wow. That's a little.
So are you gonna?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being below. This one, right?
Yeah. Some guys are like fun. Some
This.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Yeah. That's great. So like I need to be in a short. I haven't taken it, so it takes. Wow, but I didn't love that. I was like, you're in it. My advisor was like, why are you doing this? And I was like, oh, so then you say like, that's so good. That's like, I'm just like,
Oh, really?
Oh,
Like all
yeah, just look it up. The other side. I didn't think I did like fast diving first. Just kind of really get what is that? I was like, oh, now one times like that was where you start. I was like, no, I'm not kidding. There's just a foundation negative. Yeah.
Dude, I kind of like dude,
So what did
they have like but like both of them, that's the Tuesday and Thursday, but then they have either. I'm like.
Okay, so we'll start our second half. Okay, so now we are starting to learn some string operations and methods. So usually what we do with strings is we would probably have to concatenate this. In Python, it's really easy to do so. You just use the addition mark, just like you do for math. So you with string A plus string B, and they will concatenate into 1 full strings as output. So it's really easy to do those concatenation of strings in Pythons. So for example, if you type hello is the this one will be a string and with a plus operators, and then another strings. The output will tell you in 4 strings into hello world. So this is the method we do with the arithmetic operator addition, or you can call a method which is called join. So join will be this one. You'll have something here before and dot join parenthesis, and here they will put things you want to join together. Okay, you join this with nothing in between. Okay, so for method is like a functions, but it's more simple and specific data types. Here, you will have this empty string at the beginning, which means it's called to concatenate these 2 stuff together. So it will be empty strings. So nothing will show up between the 2 strings you wanna do concatenation. And here you will put in a list. So we'll learn list tomorrow, but for here is just easy to know with this bracket. This is called a list data types, which will a collections of 2 strings. One is hello, one is comma, empty space, world. Okay. So we are joining these 2 stuff together with nothing in between. So they will show exactly the same thing that we do with the addition mark. Okay. So we can just print this output from this joined method. Okay. So they will print out the same thing like here. Okay. Yes.
So is that the return, the result is in list or is string now?
It is in string now.
So even though it says like concatenate the strings in a list, it's not a, like when you print it, it's not a list. It's a string.
What?
So for example, if we assign a variable equals this dot join method, what will this variable be? Like what category it will be?
You mean what this stuff will be? There will be a string. So we can maybe just call type. They will tell you is the string. Yeah. So basically like why this is the method, because they are very specific to data types. So the output will be a string for the join function method. Okay. So we learned 2 methods now, how to concatenate string. One is basically just use the addition mark plus, right? And one is the join method. Okay. And now we can also reformat. You can also format a string by replacing the stuff inside, calling the curly bracket and using the dot format parenthesis method. So you see this form with the dot, which means it will be something before this method. So we're trying to print something like this one, A plus B equals to C. We want to print something in this format, and we are assigning what will we print it here. We are assigning 2, 2, and 2 plus 2. So they will assign the first 2 into the first curly bracket, the second one to the second curly bracket, and the third one to here. So they will print out the form into a equation like you designed. Okay. And also you can print the digits like in this format. We're calling this val. This will be a variables in 0.2 float, which will be a float with 2 digits. Okay. So we are adding we're assigning this val to be 2. So they will print this stuff into a float format. So this is just trying to manipulate what you are trying to show off, what you're trying to print out. Okay. So let's see what the output will give us. So the first one, we are doing print and equation A plus B equals to C, and we assign stuff here. And so we'll print 2 plus 2 equals to 4. Okay, so this whole thing will be a string. Okay, this is the output. Yes.
I didn't understand. Use the curly bracket.
Okay, so the curly bracket is something we're trying to replace with the values we assign here. Okay, we're trying to, so think about you want to print something like this. Okay, and we want to change the values accordingly. So they will assign the first value to the first bracket, the second value to the second bracket, and then final to here. Okay, so, but I want to print in this format, in this stuff, into equation format, no matter what the number it is. So I can change, I can just switch the numbers here, but I'll still print it out in the format A plus B equals to C. Okay, the print out this stuff will be a string format. Okay, so the bracket, the value inside the bracket could be replaced by what you assign later in this parenthesis we call parameters. Okay. So let's see another examples with the how to manipulate the digit you want to show up. Here, I'm trying to print the discount with assigned values called val. It can be 2, 4, or what numbers you design. But I want it to be a float format with 2 digits. So I will use .2f. Okay. So this will print out a string. See, this is the double quotation mark. So this total output will be a string. The string will tell us we will have discount, and then it will be $2, and we're showing up 2 into 2 digits. Okay. So we can also manipulate the output. If this one is telling us we want to float with 2 digits, we can also with scientific numbers with 2 digits. They will print out, the formal part will be the same, but things you assign for the numerical part will be 2 digits and its numeric scientific expression. Okay. So format is the easy way for us to design what the output should look like. Okay. If you change into 1, just 1 digit, there will be 2.1, 2.0. Okay. So now we learned a little bit more about how to do string concatenations. We know using addition mark, just a plus, or we can use the join method to put 2 or even more strings into one final strings. Okay, and we know with the format method how to manipulate the output into the form we want. And we can also manipulate how many digits we want to show up if this is a numerical numbers. Okay, so now it's just a recap. So next we are going to know more about strings. So again, we are learning new method. You see this one with a dot, and the method name and then a parenthesis. There will be a method. So what this strip method doing is they will remove the white space or the empty space at the beginning, at the end of a string. What I'm telling is, you see here, we see there's a strings like this length. So there's some empty spaces at the beginning, at the end, but they are all enclosed in a double quotation mark. So when you take these strings and you print out, these empty space will show up, but we don't want that things happens. So we can call the strip functions. They will remove this stuff and print it out only the things, the matters. Okay. And another method is quite useful, is called count. What this count method do is they will count the number of occurrence of a substrings inside the main strings. For example, for this one, if we are counting a substring as, they will tell you, so there's 1, 2, 3. So basically they will return an integers telling you how many times the S strings shown up in the strings you input. Okay, so let's see what the output tell us. So you see the first, the input strings, we got empty space. So basically they will show with a empty space if you call these variables. And then once I called the strip method for these strings, they will remove the prefix and the suffix empty white spaces for you automatically. Okay. And then we are counting, see what the count output is. We're seeing how many times these as substrings occurs in these long strings. Okay, so we can just eyeballing this, and we know there will be 3 occurrences for S substrings, and the output exactly to be 3. Okay, so these are useful method we often used when doing programming. Okay. So now I would like you to starting to do this exercise. We'll give like 5 minutes. So here you will see the examples. Remember, this is called variable assign. We are assigning a variable called S1 that will equals to, this will be a tab, and XYZ will be different variables. You can call this dogs, cats, and whatever, and then print it out. Okay. And then replace these things. Okay. And see how the strings will show up in the output. Okay. You can replace X, Y, Z into different forms for your own words.
So strip is only for white space. Yes. You can't, if I wanted to like take out all of the A's or something, you can do that, that.
You can convert that into this and then to user. Okay, so here we're assigned a variable called S1. So I'll just follow what they say here. So we're starting with a tab. Remember the backslash and T means a tab, and then empty space, cats and dogs and pigs, and then empty space and backslash, and that will be the next line. And S2 will be starting with 2 next line, and then uppercase cats and dog, and then next line. So let's see what these things will print it out. Okay, so in print, when you call the print, this, although this is one full strings, right? But the tab will shows up here. And then there will be an empty space showing up as well. And then to the next line. So you see there's an empty line showing up here. And I also called print S2. So print S2 will starting with two next lines. So there will be 3 empty lines showing up. And then this upper cases, cats and dogs, and then next line. So you will see there will be taking several lines showing up as what we designed for the variables S1 and S2. So we are trying to get familiar with what the strip does to the strings, okay? So we are storing the output from S1 strip with prefix and suffix empty space into another variable called S3, okay? And S4 will be a variable that's storing the values when S2 is stripped of the prefix and suffix empty space, okay? And then I'll print S3 and S4 out, okay? So let's call this. So you see now, the S3 and S4, they are just 1 line strings, no empty spaces at the beginning, no empty spaces at the end. And they are just the place we want to print with the meaningful context inside. So that is what the string will do for us. They will remove the empty spaces before and after the meaningful characters inside the strings. Okay. Questions so far? Okay. So another method is the count. So remember, the count will be counting for occurrence of one substring inside a string. They will return an integer telling how many times a substring occurs. Okay. So we have assigned S1, S2, S3, and S4 in the previous code cells, right? So now we are trying to count how many times this blank space occurs inside the S1 strings. So what is the S1? S1 is this one. So there will be a tab, empty space, empty space, empty space, empty space, and the next line. Okay. And then we count S3 as well. So S3 will be this one. So there will be no pre and after empty space. Okay. So let's see. So if I called S1 to count for the empty space, they will return into 4. So there will be before, in between, and after 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And if I count for S3, they will return 2 because there's just 2 empty spaces in between this place, Cas and here. So that is what count do. They can count the substring. So the substring could be an empty strings, right? So this is what count will do for us. Okay. So that's back to string concatenations. So we know we can add it up two strings with the arithmetic operators addition mark. So if we print S1 plus S2, so S1 plus S2, there will be these two strings adding up together. So they will show up exactly this one with all of the empty spaces recorded. Okay, print S3 and S4s. So they will be into one line. So even between S3 and S4, there should be no empty spaces in between. Okay. So that is the basic functions, how we manipulate with strings. We can concatenate them. We can strip the empty spaces. We can count the substring occurrence in between, and we can even format how we design to print it out in our console. Okay. So next, let's have a pop quiz. What is the output for this code? We have gone through this before. We are assigning a z variable to be integer 5. And then type z plus 11. What would be the output, A, B, or C? That's right. So remember, it should be 5 exactly. So why this has happened is because you did not reassign what the z should be if you were not really adding up together, right? But if you're trying to print into z plus equal to 11, they will adding 11 to the 5. So that's the different stuff. You have to reassign to do the operations. Okay. Next, what will be the output of this code? So we assign x to be 41, z equal to x plus 11, x equal to 80. What will be z? It's very straightforward. A, B, C, or D. Yeah. Exactly. So there should be 52 because so you should read the code in orders. Even is reassigned, it's still in orders. So we assign x to be 41. Z will be 41 plus 11, so should be 52, right? And then we reassign x to be 80, but it's reassigned. So it's not affecting the previous variables we assign. So there should be 52 for the specific z variables. Okay. So that's starting to do these exercise. Let's try to formalize the question first. So we need to compute the volume and surface area of a sphere with radius 6. Okay, so the hint here is like we know the volume should be 3 divided by 3 multiplied with pi, and then will be the radius with the exponential 3. So there will be the volume formulation. And the A will be the surface area, will be 4 multiplied with pi and r squared. So there will be the area of A. So the r is the radius. So here is just trying to practice how we assign for the variables. So the exercise, the question telling you the sphere with the radius 6. So we can assign radius into these r variables to be integer 6. And we know pi is a specific numbers usually we can just use 3.14, but it's indefinite, right? So we can have pi to be these numbers, and then we put the arithmetic operations, 4 divided by 3, and then multiply with pi and multiply with r with exponential enunciation of 3. Okay. So this will be the volume. And you printed out these volumes, seed numbers. And the area will be with these formulations, 4 multiply with pi, multiply with r squares, and then you print it out. So anytime you change with the radius, you can just change here, these locations, but they will still compute the volume and area for you. Okay, so there will be the calculation part. Any questions so far? So next we are learning something called casting. So casting the sometimes it's like we learn about the data types for strings and some numbers, integers or float in the very beginning of today's workshop. But sometimes we might need to convert the values between different data types. That is what we call casting. Okay. So we can cast something into string function, into a string data types by calling string parenthesis. So this will be a functions. This function will do the string casting for you. And similarly, if you call casting, if you want to convert something into integers, you can call the integer, the int functions, or the something into float functions. So they will converting the data types into the float format or integer format. But there's limitations as well, like you cannot casting a string, like the text strings into integer or float. That is not logical. Okay. So like, let's try this one. So we'll say, here we have a strings called discount is the $sign +2. This will raises an arrow. So you can see what the arrow message is. So you can only concatenate strings, but not strings and integers. Okay, so that is what the arrows calling you. This is called type arrows, which means the data type doesn't match. Okay, so how to, if we wanna print the exact things like this, I wanna print a discount is equal to $2. What I have to do is to cast this integer into strings so they can print out as a full strings together. Okay. So I can do this by calling, changing the integer 2 into a strings by calling the string functions. Okay. So this will tell you there will be no type arrow again. They will print out a full strings here. Another way is you can, it's not casting, but just assign this to be a strings. So they will print out the same thing again. So this is called casting. We can cast a integer into a strings, okay? Now let's do some exercise. First, create one variable of string type and one variable of a float type, and try to concatenate these two variables, and then convert the float to a string using the string casting functions, and then concatenate these things again. So here is the examples. We can create a string variable called s. So the s represents a string called string data. So this will be the literal for this string, the s variables. So I create another float variables to be 25.0. So S and F are two different data types. And I try to concat them together. So if not do anything, this will raises an error telling you there's a type error occurring because these are two different data types. They cannot using the concatenation for manipulate. But we can do this by casting the float, this f, into a strings. Okay, so this one will return string data is equal to string data and 25.0. So this 25.0, they already become a string data types. Okay. So any questions so far? So remember when you do castings, like you have numbers you wanna casting into strings is not very much limited, but if it's already a strings, it's hard to convert. It's impossible to convert into a float or if it's a text string, it's impossible to cast into string or float. So it's the logic error. Okay, so we're going to the next topic, which is input and output. So the input is a functions that will read data from the user's input as in strings. What does this means is what you type in the console, they will take this input and into your programs. Okay. So let's try to run this interactive cells. If you run this, they will pop out this dialog and you will say, hello. Okay. So you can even store what the users input into a new variables. For example, I store the input of what I type into a variable called user input. Okay. Sorry, I think I need to restart this stuff. Okay. Let's starting from here. So user input. So I think I got some kernel busy issues happening here. I might just shut down this stuff. Okay, so let's see if that works. You can type something as the user input. Okay, and then like I just said, for the input functions, is that will take what the users type in the console. They will take this as a string, okay? And then we store this input into this variable called user input. And now we'll print it out what the user input is. That will tell you exactly what I just typed is the hello strings, okay? So it's very, you can think about this like this occurs in several places. Like when you're trying to log in to a website, it will ask you try to type your username and password, something like that. So that is basically what the input function is doing. But always remembers for this one, they will take whatever you type as a string. So you can also ask for questions like, how are you today? Okay. So they will pop out this message telling you what you're asking. So you can type good, whatever's, and the user mood, this one will store a strings called good, what I just typed. Okay. So it's very useful for this kind of interactive things. You want something get immediately from the users. But like I just said, they will take everything as a strings. But what about you're asking something like you, the input will need to be a numerical values, okay? For examples, we wanna try, what if I wanna do this with integers, okay? So for example, if I type 4, any integers, and I want to print it out to multiply with this integers 4, what would happen? You can imagine this is a arithmetic operation with a integers and a strings. So there will be a arrows. So you see what happens is 2 multiply with the integer 4, they will give you 2, 4 as the strings, okay? It is not numerical operations, it is the string operations, okay? But this is not what we want. So we need to do casting later, okay? So if you wanna do something to be divisions, what would happen? There will raises arrows telling you strings and integers, they cannot be to the operand types, okay? You cannot divide it a strings with a integers. So there will raises this type arrows. So what you need to do is we can casting, like what we just learned, to convert different data types, okay? For examples, I still the same questions. I wanted to do multiplications for any integers I input into the console. So I can call this int functions, remembers? This is a casting functions that will convert anything inside the parentheses into integers. So the input is the strings, so we converted them into integers. Okay. Can do this. If we type 2, they will print it out exactly the output we want. Will be integer 2 multiplied with integer 2, 4. Okay. So this is the usage for input. And also always remember what they take from the input will be a strings. You need to do casting afterwards if you are trying to do mathematical, numerical operations. Okay. So I think I'll stop here for another break for 10 minutes. So we'll come back and then do another half hours class, and we're done for today. Okay. So if you have questions, just let me know.
Probably just. Actually manage it. I already dropped. Yeah. Well, actually, I haven't really. There you go. I haven't done it. So it's basically. I brought it with like standard. Create. So it's like. So whenever I can find it. I think that's something like that. That's pretty about 60 pieces. Is it? Do you think people can start with? And I think at the few labs, they do both. Or wait, what? Okay, wait.
I was like, yeah,
Okay.
I like it.
Okay. Because you just said to me, our middle entry. You could not use it just like now. That's the so over like that builds no, it's but they're yeah, it's nice.
I feel like that's just like where I I have like a water issue, right?
Yeah.
Water.
So you
not water.
So there's like a nice amount.
Oh, okay. Oh, I was wondering. Well, I don't. I'm sure it is. No, I also see.
It's like. I guess I like it.
Someone from Mars.
Yeah. Right. That's cool. But it's like. Oh, but you have like a bad thing. Yeah. Oh, that's true. Oh, you're on the street. Yeah. So this point. Yeah. Yeah, that's it, Rob. Exactly. Yeah. But it's like.
Right. Well,
I think it works because they have more of these studies.
because I'm really.
Oh, yeah.
I have a lot to like. Have you tried to? I have people kids. And you don't have a lot of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's actually like 4 yards and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, I'll try some. Because also, I'm
I'm staying in just definitely next year. Then I'll probably. It's nice. It's very close. It's very.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well,
Like
then if I just there was
I just not too scared. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know where this is gonna go. I can't take this risk right now.
But then if I just so then in this new shape, so it's ready.
Yes, last quarter. Well, did you like usually the morning? Yeah. Usually the mornings like I go and like swim and then go. So like there's a couple times when I was right from flash class. I would like look to see if there's anyone in our classes that was like staying at the bus. And I never find it. So I was like, oh, there's people there. Then I'll just like get on them. But like exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's why. Okay. I was trying to. Yeah. Because you're balancing the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
You don't know if there's anything happening, I mean, because I think it's flexible, there's never anything.
I did forget.
I think you just restart.
Yeah,
It happens for the inverse stuff.
because I restarted and still,
Yeah.
there's just, oh,
Yeah.
oh, wait, we're not supposed to do
Okay,
that.
you have to type something to end the sessions.
Yeah.
Okay, is that the same?
Do we have to use every?
Is that same for the same?
Yeah, because you already have something in progress. That one, you didn't finish it. Yeah, so you have to finish this.
Just to see how I'm on.
Anything, yeah. Enter.
Okay.
And then you're done. And this one probably you can restart again. And then on it, yeah.
Maybe just. Oh, okay.
So this means like you are executing two things together. So the kernels cannot figure it out.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that one, because another one, you haven't finished it. But you are trying to.
Oh.
That's easy, they never.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
I like. Right, so.
Yeah.
Like really funny. Oh, yeah. They do have like walls that still.
Okay, so let's start our final part of the class today. So we still have a little bit things. So we just learned about how to do the input function with the input function, how to call this. You can take anything you from the users and take it as a strings and then store this as a variables for the following uses. So that is what the input function is doing. So now we are learning something for the output part. So we've called this function several times in this workshop already, but just going through this again to see how there's a lot of things we can do with the print functions, okay? So again, you see these things is the print and then with the parenthesis, which is a functions. So functions that will, this functions you can tell from the names is print something from this parameters you give them. Can output variables of different types to display if they are given a separate parameters. So what does this mean? Remember, if we're trying to print a strings and a float together, they will give you type arrows telling you you cannot do that. You cannot concatenate strings and integer together, right? That will be the type arrows. So these print functions telling you can print different types of data if you giving them a separate parameters. Okay. So what does this mean is if you print 2, they will be fine. But what about this? You are printing integer 2, string for a specific symbol, integer, and other strings, integers. What would this happen? Okay, so if you have a separators, that will be fine. So like what the print function is just telling you. Okay. And then we can have this print this with variables. So we are storing a value 2 multiplied with 2. So there will be 4 integers with the variable a. And I want to print 2 times 2 equals 2. And with this specific variables output. Okay. If there's a separators, there should be fine to print it out. Okay. Let's start from this practice. We can print integer 2 without and arrows. What about this? We can print number, integer, string, integer, strings, integers. So they will print exactly what we are selling. But remember that you need to have these separators inside, okay? Because there are different data types. So now is another thing. So we're storing an integer to be a variables, and we're printing a strings and the variables. Okay. That will print 2 times 2 equals 4. Okay. Because there's the separators, it is okay to print it out as strings and a integer together. Okay. Remember in the very beginning of this workshop, we learned another method called format. Remember, so we have this curly bracket. We're trying to print something in the form into this equation a plus b equals to c. Okay, and then we assign different values to the bracket by the parameters we put for the format method. It's also separated with separators, comma here. So this bracket will be integer 2. This bracket will be integer 2. This one will be 2 plus 2 into this format. Okay. So see, this one will be very similar to these guys we're printing out. Okay. So now is so the data types will always be a problem, right? So we can, if we want to print something float, we can always converting them into or called casting them into the strings. For example, we if we're having a float variables 2.5 into variable a, and then want to try to print it out what the type it is, we can call the type for a into, and they will return, this will be a float. Let's see how this goes. So we will have a has type So the type will telling you this is a float data type. And B, we do string casting. We are casting this float into a string. So the B variables should be a data type of strings. So as you can see here, when I call type B, they will return it is a strings once I do the casting. Okay. So let's do this exercise. Write a program that will read user's sentence. Okay, and then count the number of words in a sentence and stores it as a variable. Print the number of words to the users. So we're trying to be familiar with what we just learned for the input functions and also the print functions, right? So let's just try to frame the questions. Read the user sentence. So from this line, we know we might need to call the function input. Okay, so let's write from here for these examples. We are designed a variable called user input, which will take input from the user end. And then to be on the safe part, we are trying to remove, strip those empty spaces in the prefix and suffix area for anything you typed. Okay. So these data will be a strings, and then count the number of words in the sentence to store as a variables. Okay. So the words will be one more than the empty spaces of one sentence, right? So we are trying to count the empty spaces, how many times it occurs in a sentence you type in. So there will be a space count that will return an integers, okay? So the word count will be the space count plus one. So this is the logic when I do trying to solve these questions, okay? So like this one, I try to ask for a sentence and I type a sentence called argue. So there's 3 words inside the sentence I type. And then I count for the space. So there will be 2 spaces here, which means there will be 2 plus 1 words in the whole sentence I typed. So you can see the space count will be 2 and the word count will be 3. Okay. So remember this, if we're doing this in counting for the space count, this strip function will be really important because they will remove those additional non-necessary empty spaces inside the whole sentence. Let's try to do review another task we already done before, which will be the calculation for the volume and surface areas for a given radius. Okay. But now we are doing this in different ways. We'll read the radius from the users. So the users can assign the radius to computing and then compute the volume and surface area with these equations we already designed and then printed out the volume and surface area to the user. So there will be the print functions, input functions, and then do the arithmetic calculations. Okay. So again, we are doing this one. So we are trying to assign those constant values. For example, there's pi. We can assign into like 1.14. And the radius will be the user input. So we are taking the user input into input a radius. Okay. But remember this one, everything we type will be a strings. We need to casting this variable into a float. So we can do the following calculations. So I'll casting with these float functions. So this R will be the radius that will be taken as a float, and then do the calculations with the volume and also the areas. Okay. So we can do any, now we can have many options. We can asking for the users what is the input radius anytime, so the output will change accordingly. So for what you type, okay. So another unit transformations is the well-known Celsius to Fahrenheit converters. So we know the formulations to do the Fahrenheit from Celsius is from this one. So Fahrenheit will be equals to the Celsius multiplied with 9 divided with 5, and then plus 32. So there will be, these numbers will be stored as a Fahrenheit values. So we can take the input from the users. So the input will be the constant Celsius, and then output with a converter with the formulations to calculate the Fahrenheit, okay? So again, we're taking the input. So telling the user we are input a degrees of Celsius. Okay. And then casting these numbers into a float for the following computations. Okay, so then we can calculate the Fahrenheit with the float Celsius inside, and then print it out the Fahrenheit value. So again, so the task was setting 32 degrees Celsius. What is this equal to Fahrenheit? We just put 32. So it will be reading as a float 32.0 into the C variables, and then do the calculation. Finally, we know it will be equals to 89.6 Fahrenheit. Okay. So any questions so far for input, printing, casting? Good. Okay.
It's really
okay. So we are going for another data type, which will be a logical, dealing with some logical expressions. So these data types is called booleans. So is the logical expression that will be called true or false. Okay. So there will be specific text true and false. There will be the two possible values for Boolean variables. Okay. So if you type if you print it out what this true data type is, they will telling you this is a Boolean variables. So Boolean variables is quite useful when you're trying to do the later on programming, is trying to make decisions. When something is true, what will you do? When something is not true, what will you do? This kind of logical expressions. Okay. So there's some relational operations that will return booleans. For this one, so we are trying to, if we are saying like if x is smaller than y, less than y, so they will return a true or a false. Okay, equal, less or equal to, this greater than, greater or equal to. So equals to is the double equal marks. There will be the justification whether x equals to y. And exponential plus a equal mark, which means not equal to. So there will be the relational operations for the Boolean functions. Okay. So this is usually used for numerical data. For example, if 10 is less than 15, if 12 is greater or equal to 12, something like this. So it will also be applied to alphabetical orders if this is the context. For example, this AB is greater or equal to BB. Okay, so there will be a numerical, so the justification will based on numeric, alphabetic orders. Okay. So let's see what this will return in a Boolean variables. So we have this if 10 less than 15. So it will be a true statement. So they will return you a true. So if 12 greater or equal to 12, which is the true as well. So they will return the true. Okay. So AB is greater than BB. Seems not because it's the alphabetic orders. So they will give you a false, return a false variables. Okay. So this is what we use for the Boolean variables. Okay. So let's do this exercise. We first create and initialize two variables, two numerical type X and Y. Create a variable B that is equal to this one, where this operand will be greater than, smaller than, greater than, less than, equal to, not equal, something like that. And then we print variable B, and then we print what this data type it is. Okay. So basically we just go through what we just learned for the Boolean variables. So here I just assign X to be 3.2, Y to be 4.0. So B will be storing the justification whether X equals to Y. So we know X equals to Y, it is not a true statement because they are definitely not equal to. So that will what we store for B. Okay. So as you can see, the B will be a Boolean variable. The value is false. Okay. Let's do this a little quick. What is the output of the following code? So we assign X to be 12 integer. B is the justification whether X equals to 5. And then we'll print what B is. So what would B represent, A, B, C, or D? Want to guess? The easy way, we can just type in the interactive cell and we can see. Okay. So we assign X to be 12. See if X equals to 5 is not right. So they will give you a false values saying X, this one is a false statement. So this is the third data type we learned from today. We know strings, we know numbers, and now we know another type called Boolean, which is the true and false if statement. So it's very useful when you have to make some logical expressions. Okay. Last, we're trying to get a little bit more from this if statement. So if statement is occurs like in almost, I would say, every programs showing up because is the building blocks for writing the programs, right? So what this if statement means is like you can also alternate the program with the Boolean variables. So if is what it means is if something happens, it's a logical statement. If something if A happens, we'll do this part. If not, we go to next lines, okay? So else if, ELIF will be else if, is an optional one, which means the second conditions. If this second condition happens, we'll execute this part, okay? If the second condition happens. If not, we'll go to the next line. And then there could be several else if, depends on how many conditions you expected. And then if nothing happens in here from if to the several else if, there will be else, which means anything but other than what just happens. They will execute this part of the code. Okay. So here is also a good example of how we do the Python coding. So we do, for example, we see if A happens, we'll have this mark and then go to the next line. We have a tab, which is an indentations, and we say what will be executed if this is happening. So this indentation is the Python's building blocks. They will control the flow for the code. This is very different from other programming languages, which usually shows up with bracket, the curly bracket. So there will be the different part when you doing the Python coding. And it also will raises arrows if you don't do the indentation right. They will always pop out indentation arrows, which means you have to go back and check if you missed one indentation or you have one more indentation in your code, okay? So let's go through what this if statement could be used, okay? So in these examples, we are trying to make adjustment for two basketball teams, which teams wins. So you know, like the greater the values, the bigger numbers, which means the team will wins, right? So we have the score for Team Eagles, we have the scores for Team Tigers, and we use if statement to say if Eagles scores greater than Tiger scores, which means Eagles wins. So we use this if statement to make justifications. And then if this is true, then we know Eagles wins, and then we can proceed to this command. We'll print Eagles win. Okay, and remember there will be a indentation in this line. Okay, there will be other options might occur. For example, it will be Tigers win. How about they might be tied games? So you have to consider all the possibilities when you write this if statement. But let's go from the simplest way. So we just have this greater than happens, then we know who wins in these two 1 versus 1 comparisons. Okay. So this just execute again. So we give them the scores for two teams and then just do the comparisons for the two numbers. And then we print out who will win these games. Okay. So we know the if statement, the only necessary part is the if one, but there will be other possibilities. You can use several else if, and then the rest will go to the else part. Okay. So in this one, we are going from the angle, we know the numbers. There's 190, there's one is 97. So there's just two possibilities that might occur. One is Eagles wins, one is Tigers wins. So we just made one justification whether Eagles score greater than Tiger score. If this happens, we print Eagles win, else we'll print Tigers win. Okay. So, and then there will be a third possibilities is the tie games. You can put this in else and then print this ties. So what would happen if we got an actual tie games? They will go through whether the Eagles score greater than Tigers. This not. Then we go to this line. If Eagles score less than Tiger score, it's also a false statement. And then we go to the final conditions, which will be the else one, which means it is a tie games. Okay. So they will finally print it out, these ties. Okay, so we know the basic concept for if statement, and now we are going to write a program. Is more interactive, so we need to write a program that will accept users' input for ego score, and also another one that will take users' input for the tiger scores. So there will be two numbers, and print it out the winning team. So the third, number 3, this point should be do with the if statement we just learned, okay? The first 2 points, remember we know how to use the input functions to take input from the users, right? Okay. So we'll have 3 minutes, so you can write in the down cell below. Okay, so let's go to see my versions. You can do in different ways, of course. So we're taking the ego score by calling the input functions. They will asking you to input what the ego score is, okay? And then we'll store these values into these variables equals total score. And then we are taking another input that will asking for the tiger scores, okay? And store this one into the tiger's total score variables. And then we are going to do the comparisons saying if eagle total score greater than tigers, then there will be eagles win, okay? If is less than the tiger score, that will be print tigers win. Okay. And then the third possibilities is ties. Okay. So this one, they will pop out 2 times of the dialogue. So we can put in scores for eagles and then scores for tigers. And then we know this from 87 to 85, then the eagles will be the winning team. Okay. And remember also as well, the input that will be written as a string. So you need to do casting with these integer functions. Place. Okay. So unit test to maintain. So like I said, just said for the if statement, the only thing that is necessary is the line, is the condition that occurs in the if statement itself. Those else if or else, several else if are the different conditions, different possibilities that could occur. So the more you consider, the more the quality will, the code's qualities will be more higher, right? So once you consider all of the possibilities, you won't miss any things that might occur. Okay, so for examples for this one, I'm taking the scores from both teams, and I just consider whether there's only two possibilities. One is Eagles win, one is Tigers wins. So this one will be just a binary classifications for this one. But this won't work if these two teams have the same scores. So we have to consider there will be a equal of the values that is occurring. That's why we need to have a third else if statement to maintain the quality of the if statement. Okay. So like this one, if we don't consider any equals to might happens, if we give them the same numbers, 40 and 40, because we know this one is the false statement, they will go to the else statement, print the Tigers win. But we know this is not true because this equal numbers occurring. So you need to add one more line, consider for this possibilities, okay? Now we're talking another, it's a very common task or common terms we use for this if statement, which is called pass. So see this ones, we got a if statement happening here, and we're trying to comparing the two numbers. One is A and one is B, and given which one is bigger, okay? So we can do this. If A is greater than B, we print A is greater. Else if A equals to B, we pass. Pass means we hold these possibilities but do nothing, okay? And then if not, then we go to the else statement, then B is greater. So this one, they will give you, will consider the tie games that we just showed by not printing who wins, but just considering this statement. So pass, pass here will hold the space and then let the if statement go, keep continuing. So let's see this quiz. What does this program will print about? We have a variable A equals to integer 17. And we made this justification if A is greater than 12. If so, A reassigned to 1. If A less or equal to 12, then A equals to 3. Else A equals 2, and then we print what A is. Anyone want to have a guess? The easier ways will be to check by typing into the cells down below, but we can break it down one by you always to remember we have to read the code in orders, right? So we first assign A to be 17, and then the first if statement starts. If A greater than 12, then A equals to 1. So this is a true statement. So now A becomes 1. Okay. And then we go down for the next if statement happens. Okay. So, so until this line, this is occurring, this is true. So A becomes 1. So if 1 is less or equal to 12, which is a true statement, then A will be reassigned into 3. Otherwise, A is 2. So this one is the true statement as well. So that's why we get output, meaning A is integer 3. Okay. Any questions? Okay. That's the final part. Just we're going through this really quick. You don't need to memorize these tables, but you have to, when you do coding, you have to consider this Boolean operators, or and not, and the priorities like occurs. But you will get familiar with this once you do programming more and more. So, okay. So here is the table summarize the output. So A is false, B is false, then A or B will be false, A and B will be false. So this is the combinations for the justification. If A is true, B is false, A or B will be true, A and B will be false. So just to memorize this one. And there are some priorities you need to consider, like and has higher priorities than or, which means this one will have higher priorities than ors. And not has higher priorities than and. So not will have a higher priorities. Anything inside the parenthesis will be the priorities, let's say. Okay. So you don't need to memorize this, but just have a concept for this is how we do, how the program read for the logical expressions, how they make the justifications. So true and false, you can go from here, true and false. So there should be a false statement, something like that. True or false should be true. Okay. So remember, and has higher priorities than or. So we should read this one first. True and false will be a false. True or false will be a true. Okay. So they will give you a true statement. Again, so this one will have a higher priority still. They should be the same output as a true. But if we put the first part into the parenthesis, there will become the priorities, true or true. We go from here, true or true is a true. And then true and false will be a false. Okay. Not true, very obvious, is the false. Okay. It will also happen, this one is not very straightforward, but if it's in the numerical expressions, that's more straightforward. This is a true statement. This is a false statement. True and false, then there will be a false statement. Okay. That will be more straightforward. So this one is a true. This one is a false. True or false is a true. Okay. Again, this one is the different operand and has a higher priority. So this will be a false and false. False and false will be a false. Okay. So true or false will be a true. Okay. So this is just the logical expressions you can just get familiar with. Just have some priorities you need to consider. So there's one with not. So not has a higher priorities, right? So not true means false. False and false, which is a false. Not true is a false, right? So false and false, it will also be a false. And this one they put into parentheses, true and false. There will be a false, and not false will be a true. Okay. So just get familiar with this, but don't have to memorize it for now. You'll get familiar with this. So now let's do an exercise. Write a program that checks if a number from the user's input is divisible by 3, 5, or 7, but not by 15, 21, 35, or 105. Okay. So I'll do this. So I can store the input number. So remember, you always have to put to casting the input into integer first and store them into this one. And then check if the number from the user's input is divisible by 357, but not by blah, blah, blah. So you see there's an OR here. So now we know that we need a if statement. So divisible means the modulos, the remainder will be 0, right? So we can have this number modulo by, we can do this in a very ugly way. So not divisible, which means the modulos will not be zeros. Okay. Of course, you can split them into different if or else stuff, or you can just put in one line. So expect something like this. So we will have a input numbers. So we first check whether they were divisible, if anything in this is happening. Okay.
Maybe undo delete cell.
Hmm?
The edit. Undo delete cells.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. I think I have one more lines. So this just several conditions occurs here. Sound 5 and 7. Okay. So that should give you just a one line justifications, whether this is the true statement. Okay. So there's another one, leap year exercise. We'll go back to this, we'll see the answer tomorrow, but just to quickly go through how to frame the questions. How to check if an year is a leap year. So there's different features you need to know. Is like, first of all, is like if that's fully divisible by 4. If there's another conditions. So see if this is century years. So if this is century years, then the years need to be divided by 400. Okay, there's a 4 divisions. So you see there will be a 2 if statement made. One is for the first one divided by 4. Second one, if this is a century years, okay. Then there will be how you make the if statement and then print out whether the input year is a leap years. Okay, so we'll go back to this question tomorrow's. But you can try to have your own code, of course, in these cells. And I think we're good for today. And for students taking the class for credits, we have 3 assignments for today. It's not difficult. And I will encourage you to finish before tomorrow's class, but the deadline for submitting your assignment will be the next Friday. Okay. So if you're taking a credit, remember to have your assignment emailed to me by next Friday, but better to finish today because you will keep memorize the things you learned. Okay.
Do you just screenshot the code and send it to me?
Yeah, you can do that. You can also type in the cells here and send me this IPython notebook.
Okay.
Right. Okay. With your name, of course, your email.
So if I am taking this for credit, like, are we gonna have quizzes?
No.
Oh, so only the assignment?
Yes.
Okay.
Assignment attendance.